If you stutter, you're certainly not alone. Over 3 million Americans stutter. Some are famous people, such as TV announcers John Stossel, Bill Walton, and Ken Venturi. Professional athletes like Bob Love, famous statesmen like Winston Churchill, actors like James Earl Jones and Marilyn Monroe, and singers like Carly Simon and Mel Tillis. But most people who stutter are just regular folks like you and me. Let's hear from some of them about how stuttering has affected their lives.
It has impacted me academically in some respects. I have sat in classes and I have wanted to raise my hand so badly. I've had the answer and I've just ignored it and said, you know, I can't raise my hand. I just can't. And that is very frustrating.
I get so down on myself because of my speech. If I'm in a public speaking situation and I have a hard block, it can just destroy me inside. Even now, for all the years that I've worked on this, there are times when I'm standing in front of large groups of people that I can just feel awful about myself.
So sometimes I used to have to call elect, and I had to call the operator, and a lot of times I couldn't even get the first word out, and before I did, the operator used to hang up on me.
I can't even imagine what life would have been like if I didn't stutter.
It affected my socializing or the courage to participate in conversations, ask out girls, those kind of things more.
And I decided that I should just be honest with him at that point, and I explained that I had a speech impediment and I was afraid it might impede my ability to advance in the company if he saw this huge flaw that I had, or at least so I thought at the time, and so I had avoided him. And he's like, Mary, I'm so sorry that happened, and I need to tell you that I have a 7-year-old son who has a stutter.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, I can't believe that I've been avoiding this man for 2 years, because he was a very nice man. It was my own intimidation of speaking to a higher up that stopped me.
But I remember I was very upset because I'd stuttered again, and it might have something to do with asking a girl out, something very important at the time. And I did it again. I stuttered. And once I started stuttering even more. And I just compounded myself, and I felt like I was making a fool of myself again, you know. So I remember backing out of it completely and being very down and very depressed about it. And I said, there has to be a way. There's got to be a way that I can figure this out. There's got to be a way that I can work through this.
Before we come back to these men and women, let's listen to some professionals answer questions that many of us have about stuttering. One question everyone asks is, what causes stuttering?
The causes of stuttering are varied and complex. Many researchers believe that we are not as good as others at coordinating our speech mechanisms. Tiny glitches in speech and language production can make it difficult for us to speak smoothly and quickly, especially when we are stressed or under pressure. Having difficulty getting words out can be uncomfortable and frustrating. Thus, we work even harder to express ourselves. These feelings and reactions, along with everyday pressures, place even more stress on our speech mechanisms. Although we do not fully understand the causes of stuttering, we believe that many of us are born with an inherited predisposition to stutter. However, it's our reaction to the feelings of embarrassment, frustration, and shame that often increase the severity of our stuttering. Understanding how these feelings and reactions affect stuttering can help us turn it around.
Dr. Gregory discusses the fact that 4 times as many men stutter as women.
Well, males appear to have more of almost every problem than do females. This holds true whether it be childhood diseases or health problems later in life. Among school-age children, 3 to 4 boys stutter for every 1 girl who does. Recent studies have shown that more girls than boys who stutter in early childhood, that is at age 3 or 4, regain normal fluency. Speech-language pathologists point out that this higher male-female ratio in the occurrence of stuttering could be related to genetic factors and the well-established observation that speech and language skills develop at a slightly slower pace in boys. These possible genetic and developmental differences will not affect the way that you respond to therapy now as a teenager or an adult. As you will see in this video, there are many things that you can do to improve your speech.
If stuttering does run in families, does that mean my child will stutter?
Your child will inherit many of your traits and may even have a greater than average tendency to be disfluent. But this doesn't mean that he or she will stutter. Most children go through a period of increased disfluency as they're learning to talk, and most still develop normal fluency. If children grow up in homes which nurture speech development, they are more likely to overcome any inherited tendency to stutter. If stuttering does develop, or if the possibility of your child stuttering continues to be of concern to you, you should consult a speech-language pathologist who specializes in stuttering.
Does intelligence play a role in stuttering?
At some point in your life, you may have felt that people viewed you as less intelligent because of your stuttering, and you yourself may have worried about times when you were unable to express your ideas. Sometimes, as you struggle to speak, you may lose your train of thought. Your emotions may well up and make it hard for you to think or speak clearly. These moments of confusion are the result of stuttering, not the cause. As you know, there are plenty of times when you can think clearly and speak well, and if you feel you don't communicate as intelligently as you'd like, you can work to become a more effective communicator, whether you stutter or not. Remember, people who stutter are just as smart as those who don't. In fact, some famous stutterers, such as Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin, are known for their intellectual achievements.
Let's be candid. Is stuttering a psychological problem?
No, there is no evidence of this. Research and clinical observations over many years indicate that stuttering is not an outer sign of a psychological problem. However, beginning in childhood, fear becomes associated with certain sounds, words, and situations. Stuttering is frustrating and embarrassing and has an impact on your self-confidence. The feelings that you have about talking in social and work situations are normal under the circumstances. In fact, it would be abnormal if you didn't feel this way.
Most people who stutter have good days and bad days. Dr. Ramig discusses some possible reasons.
Our stuttering may go up and down for many reasons. If we are tired, sick, or upset, our stuttering may be worse. In contrast, if we are feeling rested and confident about ourselves, our stuttering may be better. Typically, stuttering changes as we talk to different people in different situations. Like the professional baseball pitcher who sometimes may struggle to throw strikes, we may also have trouble for no apparent reason at all. Experiencing fluctuations in stuttering from day to day, week to week, or even month to month is common for most of us who stutter.
People who stutter often hear the advice, just relax. Dr. Guitar discusses this.
People who tell us just relax or slow down probably mean well, but they just don't understand the complexity of stuttering. Sure, most of us who stutter will be more fluent, at least temporarily, if we reduce the tension in our speech muscles or talk at a slower pace. However, this is not always easy, especially in difficult speaking situations, when we're afraid we might stutter. Simply changing one thing about the way we talk is not likely to be a long-term answer. Lasting improvement involves many changes, not only in how we speak, but but in the way we think and feel about speaking and about stuttering.
People don't stutter when they sing. Let's hear some possible reasons why.
Singing and speaking are ordinarily learned in a different manner. As children learn to talk, they must learn new vocabulary, how to string words together into sentences, and how to put thoughts together in a meaningful way. Almost from the beginning, time pressure is involved in speaking. On the other hand, there is no time pressure in singing, nor do children have to choose words and formulate sentences. When we sing, we usually know the song by heart, and words are connected in a rhythmic pattern. We rarely get interrupted. Also in singing, we use our vocal cords, lips, and tongues differently than when we talk. Likewise, there is evidence that the brain functions differently for singing and for talking.
I've had therapy before. Is there any purpose in trying it again?
Therapy approaches have improved in recent years. Speech therapists are more skilled in helping you take what you've learned in the clinic out into real-life situations. They'll also work with you to continue your progress over the long term. Finding the right therapist is of utmost importance. We encourage you to interview several. Make sure you find someone with experience and expertise in the treatment of stuttering. Which one do you feel most comfortable with? Which one really understands the impact stuttering has had on your life? Choosing the right person, together with your dedication and motivation, can be a turning point in your life. We can't show you everything about therapy here, but we can show you some of the more important elements, along with some aspects of self-therapy that you can begin trying out right away. A natural place to begin is to analyze your speech in general and what you do when you stutter. Notice how John, with the help of Dr. Gregory, analyzes his stuttering.
John, can you show me how you might stutter on a word you more frequently have trouble with?
Yeah, it's usually the first word that I say, and it's usually a when, where, or why. For instance, it'll be, why do you want to go here, or where are we going to go tonight, or why should we do this? It's a kind of a block.
Okay. Now, as you do that, now you can feel that tension, can't you, in your mouth?
Yeah, I can feel it in my mouth, and my lips, and in my neck.
Now watch as Dennis describes where he tenses when he stutters.
We went into a hut, a cabin in the mountains. There was a block on an M. The tension was in my lips. I could feel it. It was also in my throat because I couldn't get the sound moving. My whole face sort of tightened up. So to improve that, I need to, again, relax my articulators. I need to open my mouth when I've got it slammed shut, which makes speaking difficult when your mouth is closed. And so concentration on that would improve that word. Mountains.
In this next segment, Ms. Cully uses a videotape to help Chris explore what he does physically when he stutters.
Peterson, and the date is
So you're repeating the sound because you're not sure you can go forward, and then you're waiting until it seems like you're able to, but you're not really trying to move forward through the word. Is that right?
Right, yeah.
Where were you feeling the tension?
right in my lips and in my jaw.
When John, Dennis, and Chris were analyzing their stuttering, they were also confronting what they feared. When we reduce our fears and avoidances, quite often we increase our fluency. Studying your overall speech is important for two reasons. First, you learn how stuttering affects your speech as a whole. Second, you begin to learn what is involved in producing normally fluent speech. Knowing these two things will help you to manage your fluency and your stuttering. Let's hear what Daryl has to say about this phase of therapy.
Probably of all of the techniques I used or approaches I used, developing awareness was probably the most important. Awareness of what I was doing when I was speaking. That's what we really started with in the clinic was open stuttering, a lot of stuttering.
Yes.
And learning how to be aware of the various tense areas in my speech, how tense my jaw was.
For many people, analyzing their speech and their stuttering is a very important part of therapy. Here we have an exceptional example of a man who has carried out his own self-analysis and developed a plan for therapy all on his own.
When I was in my early 20s, my stuttering problem peaked, and I determined that I was going to overcome the problem. I started keeping meticulous notes. When I started, who I was talking to, what I ingested, my body parts, my movements, those kinds of things. And I determined that I was going to focus on movement first. And I started focusing on my feet and my hands. And I started trying to immobilize those, to keep those very stationary. That seemed to work tremendously well, just trying to keep my body parts stable, non-moving. I then focused on my speech and recognizing that I was talking probably way too fast. And I started cutting down my speed tremendously. I tried cutting it in half, and then I tried cutting it in half again. And I found that was also very, very successful. So successful, in fact, that in the evening, I used to come home and practice that. I used to come home and practice and keep my hands quiet and keep my feet quiet and just speak or read very, very quietly. And also I'd be thinking of things, but I'd be thinking of things in a very, very slow, meticulous manner, almost like a 45 that's running at half speed.
Your attitude about your stuttering and yourself have a significant influence on how you respond to therapy. Because this is true, a lot of time is spent focusing on attitudes throughout the therapy process.
In my job, I am in a position where I have to talk a lot, as you said, and I have all my life been determined not to let stuttering get the best of me. So I'm in confrontational situations a lot. I mean, confronting my stuttering, and sometimes confronting other people. I sometimes find that my stuttering gets in the way, but I would feel a lot worse if I shrank from the confrontations because of my speech. I think it's important, certainly for me, to not let stuttering rule my life. There are a lot more important things in my life than my stuttering. And even as embarrassing as it might be sometimes, it's important for me to really take charge of my life and not let those things get in my way.
John talks to Miss Cully and Shelley about how he did not let his stuttering compromise his career goals. These positive attitudes have contributed to his success in improving his speech.
When I think back to when I was a college student, I struggled weeks and months on end about my career path, knowing that I was a stutterer, and trying to decide what doors that would close for me. But at some point I realized that stuttering was not who I was. It was merely something I did. And I wanted to show myself that I could do what I wanted to. And I wanted to become a physician. And so I tried not to let my stuttering interfere with that choice. Now, to say that that was easy would not be true. It was very hard at times with my stuttering to pursue that career path. but I think not letting the stuttering define who I was, but instead letting my true abilities define what I could become really made the difference.
Being open about your stuttering is also important. Let's listen.
We spent about a month just stuttering very openly and very obviously. And what I noticed is, and you encouraged this, was I was able to take that into my life and start talking more openly with everybody I knew. Well, not everybody, obviously, but with a number of key people about my stuttering treatment and that I was wanting to work on my stuttering and talk about it, ask them about it, ask them their attitudes about it. I'd never really done that before.
Dennis confirms this.
I think anything you try to hide tends to eat at you. So if I try to hide my stuttering, there is no way that I am going to hide my stuttering. My stuttering is very obvious. I may be fairly fluent sitting here talking to you, but on a day-to-day basis, my stuttering is pretty obvious. So for me to try to hide it generally makes it worse.
Mary shares with us that she is more comfortable now that she isn't hiding her stuttering.
So now what I find that I do, and it helps a great deal, is I let go of that image as much as I can, or that fear of this perfect image that I have to give or something, and I just start talking with people right away in meetings and saying what I want to say and try not to hide myself anymore, whether I'm having a great day with my speech or a not so great day.
Some people use pseudo-stuttering or stuttering on purpose in a very direct way to reduce their fear. Dave uses this as a way to fight his tendency to hide his stuttering.
The most helpful, I think, is where you stutter on purpose. One of the things covered in the book I really use called Self-Therapy for Stutterers is where we may not have a choice whether we stutter, but we have a choice on how we stutter. So I put the blah, blah bounces and the prolongations in on purpose. And that seems to help quite a bit.
Not everyone will use this strategy to the extent Dave does. Another way of being open is to let others know you stutter. Daryl discusses being open about stuttering during a job interview.
It just, I believe it puts the person you're speaking to at ease, a little more at ease, to have him realize that it's okay to talk about it, that it's okay from the standpoint of you're aware of it, and he's aware of it, and now we can go on with our business.
Desensitization, or becoming less sensitive about your stuttering, is an important part of attitude change. Dennis admits this is not an easy thing to do.
Desensitization is very important for me. I don't do it, again, as much as I should. I think it's difficult for a stutterer to be truly desensitized to it. Stuttering is a very hard and can be a very embarrassing thing. And as much as I try to desensitize myself, and I do, I throw myself into situations that I don't think any normal person would throw themselves into sometimes, because I'm not going to let stuttering get in my way.
Steve sums it all up.
I think the biggest part of it for me was the attitude aspect of it. Because I have gone through so many different types of therapies, and I've tried probably every type of therapy, from hypnotherapists to everything you could imagine. Yeah. The big difference between, I think, my approach this time as opposed to any of the other previous times was just the attitude. The attitude of, okay, this is something that if I'm going to really take the time, I have to put it. It isn't really up to anyone else. There aren't any secret answers. I'm the one who has to go and make the conscious changes.
All of these people have shown us how important it is to be honest and open about stuttering. Changes in attitude prepare us to make changes in speech. Many therapists begin helping you change or modify your stuttering, whereas other therapists may begin working on your overall speech. First, we'll take a look at modifying stuttering. The goal of this is to stutter in an easier and different way by making moments of stuttering sound more like normal speech. Note that as you work on changing your stuttering, you will probably increase your overall fluency. One aspect of stuttering, using too much physical tension, is often dealt with in therapy. Let's watch as Peter, with the help of Dr. Ramig, discovers the pushing and tension associated with his stuttering.
Moving through the word, through opening your mouth just a little bit more, okay? Also, and this is a lot to do at one time, but also try to feel your tongue touch in various places. Feel your lips touch. When you get good at that, then you can sense right away when you're starting to push, much more than you can now. And that's a big part of therapy and an important part of therapy. So why don't you go ahead and try that as you're talking about school. And again, I'll continue to interrupt you and stop you to try to help you do some of this.
Obviously, because there's just too many kids. But it...
Okay, on that B now, what happened there?
I did press a little too hard.
Yeah, you pushed pretty hard with your lips, didn't you? Yeah. Okay, that's going to happen, and that's okay, but why don't you show me what we'd rather have you do?
But.
Okay, or but. Okay, but. Okay, that's a hard one because I'm starting the voice first, and that's a little bit harder to do. Try it again, just don't bring your lips together as hard.
But.
Okay, all right.
But as far as the environment.
Okay, what did you do there?
And my tongue was sort of pressing up towards the back of my mouth.
Okay. Feel any tension down here?
Yeah.
Okay, see, that's where that vowel is made, is down here. Some of it's made up here too, but a lot of it's right here. Okay. Let's try it again the easy way. Stretch it out.
Environment.
There you go. Environment. Environment. Feel down here with your hand. Go. Environment. Feel the vibration?
Environment, yeah.
You need that vibration. Good.
Internships.
Okay, try that one. It's okay that you did that, but I just want you to go back and try it my way. Try it the easy way.
Internships.
Perfect. Okay, now what was different about that? That's a way to do it. That's a good job. Remember to try to keep opening your mouth just a little bit more. It's hard to remember to do all these things, but try it, because I know this is new for you.
When I'm working on easy onsets, I'm very aware of tension in my articulators, and I try to not bring myself to a stuttering posture, but to ease into the stuttering, ease into the word, so that the tension that often builds up in my stuttering behavior does not occur, and I can get into a word without a block.
So what you're doing then is the opposite of what we many times do when we stutter, and that is pushing hard on it or getting into that stuttering posture or block. Instead, you're sliding into the real stuttering and sliding off of it by using less tension.
That's exactly right. It's such a natural tendency to push into a hard block situation, because I've done it all my life, that this requires some concentration to not do that.
Let's watch as Dave talks about another way to work on your stuttering.
Stuttering is what we do when we try not to stutter. And so in order to do that, the opposite of keeping it inside is bringing it out. Opposite of trying to keep it a secret is to not keep it a secret. So that's where the purposeful stuttering, the pseudo-stuttering, stuttering on purpose in a controlled way rather than the totally uncontrolled way comes into play.
For some, maintaining eye contact with the listener can be very positive. Let's hear what Jim says.
Eye contact is essential. Stuttering is about fear, and when I'm looking somebody straight on, I'm not avoiding, I'm not looking away, I'm confronting what I fear most. It's also a great way also to monitor my speech.
eye contact is something you can work on without the help of others. The best way to begin is to maintain eye contact with yourself in front of a mirror while making phone calls. Good eye contact not only makes us more effective speakers, but also gives our listeners a better impression of us and how we feel about our stuttering. Another strategy we often use is to increase awareness of your lips, tongue, and jaw. We call this proprioception. Let's listen to Dennis describe how he finds this useful in modifying his stuttering.
The point of over-articulation, of proprioception, is to try to feel how your articulators are moving. The more awareness I can have of what my articulators are doing, the easier it is for me to make corrections when I'm speaking. I find that overemphasis on articulation is helpful, both because it makes me more aware of where my articulators are, and it's good speech practice. I mean, good public speaking practice. And it slows down my speech. So with proprioception, I can feel where the tensions are occurring if they come up, because I'm aware of what's happening in my lips, what's happening in my throat, what's happening in my chest. And it makes it easier for me then to do something about it.
As Dennis says, as you modify or change your stuttering, you are also doing some work on your overall speech. Then, after you learn to modify or change your stuttering successfully, you can go on to work on other ways of changing your speech. For example, as you work on easy, relaxed beginnings, good phrasing, and resisting time pressure, your stuttering will decrease.
Now tell me what you did this afternoon at the office, and think of making good, easy, relaxed beginnings, good phrases, pausing, and resisting time pressure.
I arrived at work today at about 9 a.m. I checked my mail. I began my task for the day, which was installing a product on a machine. I found the machine not to be ready, so I asked to leave early and left about 2 p.m.
Now, you mentioned some of the things that you worked on. What would you say were some of the most important things in your therapy experience?
I think early on the things that I was able to grasp first were the phrasing. It seemed to present, well, I think I used to see speech as this long-running event. I was like chasing something, and I think the phrasing presented speech to me in chunks, in manageable chunks. And that was one of the other things, too, that I noticed about some of the techniques, is that they were all quite natural things that I had actually lost sight of in my running away, or running through something, trying to run for the finish line of what I needed to say. So that the tools that we were actually given actually built those natural things back into my speech.
As you've just heard, Mary feels that she has built the naturalness back into her speech. Now watch as Dr. Gregory works with John to vary his speech.
I would like a hamburger and French fries.
Okay. I see that when you think of a slower rate, you do pause more, don't you?
Right.
Okay. Now, say it faster.
Okay. I would like a hamburger and French fries.
Okay. Did you feel that you were relatively relaxed even though you were saying it more rapidly?
I found a little more tension as I was trying to say it faster.
Okay. Now say it a little bit louder.
I would like a hamburger and French fries.
Now very softly.
I would like a hamburger and French fries.
Okay. So you see that you can modify your speech and you can do a lot of different things with it, can't you?
Here we see Miss Montgomery teaching an awareness of voice production. She also shows Chris how he can change his speech by speaking very slowly and then gradually increasing his speaking rate and naturalness.
So sound-wise, it'll sound like this. So I was aware of the breathing, was careful about when I started the sound out, got the voice going nice and open in there. If I closed it off, it's going to sound like this. Hear the difference?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you try, take care with your breath so that you can set yourself up physically to keep this openness in here, just on any kind of a sound, just a vowel. Okay. You feel how open the throat felt and the vocal folds felt as you started the sound out?
Yes.
Yeah. You started out right at the peak of the inhalation. So now do it wrong on purpose. So I want you to take in a breath of air and close off those vocal folds before you start your sound. Okay, feel the difference?
Yes.
Obvious difference,
Yeah.
right? So it would be something like this. Aware. So you're keeping that throat open, vocal folds open all the way through both syllables.
Aware.
Okay, feel how open that was all the way through? Okay, now we're going to play with your name. So your name is Chris, so our focus will be on which sound?
The R.
The R, right? So you want to take care with the breath and then feel your vibration starting on the R sound.
Chris.
Okay, can you do that? Let's do it with both names, first and last.
Chris Vaca.
Okay, now can you do that a little bit faster?
Chris Vaca.
Okay. Now still feeling the vibration pattern that you're creating, just add in my name is Chris Vaca, so you're doing a whole sentence.
My name is Chris Vaca.
As you work on your overall speech, communication skills improve. John notes that as he's changed his speech, he's become a better salesman and communicates more effectively with his customers.
Once I've learned how to slow down, or really, I guess, relax a little more and not be as anxious, I found that I'm a much better communicator. I'm able to pause, I'm able to think a little bit more about what I want to say, and the words I say tend to have a little more meaning because I'm relaxed and I'm phrasing my words a little bit better, and actually I'm listening a lot more to what my customers are saying.
Many therapists use relaxation techniques and a focus on breathing, along with more traditional procedures. Let's watch.
Okay, and where you really want to focus your attention in terms of the diaphragm is not so much in the front. Most times people focus on the front, but they put too much emphasis there, so they end up contracting their abdominal muscles too much and it creates tension. So better to put the focus on the sides, right, of the ribs, and feel the expansion of the diaphragm through the ribs, actually. So feel your ribs expanding out right into where my hands are. I'll see you're expanding back here a little bit, and you're also expanding here, but it's a natural expansion.
Okay.
So there's a feel of expansiveness like all around here. And we're not restricting any movement in the chest. The chest is going to expand out a little bit too. What we don't want, though, is a whole lot of just this kind of lifting.
Okay.
Because then your breathing will be short and shallow and you won't have enough air to sustain voicing.
Okay.
And you want to keep it nice and low.
As you change your speech and experience more fluency, you will also want to continue reducing your avoidances. In this group situation, John highlights how critical it has been for him to change his avoidance behaviors.
I think avoidances for me were the root of the problem. I think that avoidances with speech turn into avoidances in life, and that you go from avoiding words to to avoiding speaking to your family, to avoiding meeting with your friends. And all of a sudden, avoidance becomes who you are or who you're not. And I think you know who you are inside. You know what you're capable of. You have high expectations and hopes for things that you can achieve. But unfortunately, because of stuttering, you tend to feel like the world can't see who you are. You can't express the John that's inside of me. A lot of people didn't know that person. And I think attacking the avoidance was a way to let them see inside who I was, and to let my family get to know me, to let my wife know about my hopes and dreams, to speak to my friends and tell them about my plans. It really, attacking avoidances was a very freeing experience.
Some of you may have had therapy and gotten quite fluent, but were never able to use your improved speech outside the therapy room. Perhaps not enough work was done to take what you learned in therapy out into the real world. We call this process transfer or generalization, and in an effective therapy program, it should start early and continue throughout the entire therapy process.
I've done a fair bit of therapy over my life. I started in school, I guess, junior high, and had therapy through college. I then didn't do therapy for a long time until a handful of years ago when I started therapy again as an adult. And it's one thing to learn the techniques, to intellectualize the techniques. That's pretty easy. It's one thing to use the techniques in a controlled speech therapy situation. That's easy also. But trying to use those techniques in day-to-day life, I have found to be very difficult.
One way to make it less difficult is to start with easy situations and work your way up to harder ones.
I need to call a camera store and find out about getting my camera fixed. Telephones are always difficult for stutterers. So before I do this, I want to think about what I'm going to do in this phone call. One thing I'll do, that I always try to do, is to give my name at the beginning of the phone call, because that's a challenge for me. So I put that up as a place to really start with practicing. I'm going to try to speak slowly. I'm going to use easy onsets as I work my way into various words. And I'm going to try to use proprioception, where I feel what I'm doing, articulate more, and possibly I can feel where my articulators are tight at some point, and if it's a word I would normally block on, I can probably use easy onsets through that if I can anticipate it early enough. So that's the plan.
Good.
So let me call him. Yes, my name is Dennis Berry, and I am interested in getting my Pentax camera fixed.
In this next segment, Ms. Cully coaches Chris in the therapy room, where he'll be receiving a phone call.
Take your time listening to it ring, and then as you're bringing it to your ear, full breath, and then releasing with a gentle start when you begin to speak.
Hello? You're speaking to Chris.
This practice in the clinic also helps Chris resist time pressure, a technique he can put to use in real life. Now let's watch as Steve talks about a more difficult situation.
I've always had a difficult time, or a more difficult time, talking on the telephone, because there isn't that face-to-face type connection or activity. So I'm always apprehensive about what the people on the other side are hearing. So there's a lot of things that I've tried to use in a conference call situation. I've certainly tried and I do use the relaxation prior to every conference call. There's not a conference call that comes that I don't take some time, shut the office door, and spend a little time concentrating on relaxation. There have been times where I've thrown in a few voluntary disfluencies. One of the things I've sort of uncovered that is a pretty good trick is I try and do that at the beginning of the conference call. So the telephone conference call might start, and I might start off with, is there anyone on the other line? Or can I ask who's on the other line? You know, finding out who all the other players are there. And I've always felt that just grabbing control of the situation at the onset of the conference call gives me that little sense of control, like, okay, I can handle this.
Susan demonstrates her openness about stuttering with her second grade class.
Every person in our classroom will get a special time to be in focus during the year, and I'm going to go first. I'm going to tell you some things about me, and when I'm finished, you can ask me questions, and I will answer them. One of the things I want you to know about me is that sometimes I stutter when I talk. Raise your hand if you know what stuttering is.
Another excellent transfer activity is a trip to a department store.
We can sit and talk about it, we can think about it and understand things on a conceptual level, but until we really experience something, we don't really know it. To go out to the stores, to go out to the restaurants, to order the meal that you really wanted, to go up and ask questions that you've been avoiding for years in a store, and get that real experience out there where it counts, where it happens. And that's really when the real learning takes place.
It is common for you to experience some regression or backsliding as you move further away from your core period of therapy. An effective program will know how to use this regression in a positive way to get you back on track. Even if you're on your own, being prepared for some backsliding or regression will enable you to use these times as a learning experience. Darryl speaks eloquently about these opportunities.
I didn't acknowledge that I was going to have problems and that it was okay to expect problems. When they would happen, it would be, I would panic. It would be like the end of the world. In order for me to really progress with my stuttering, I had to stutter. And those relapse periods actually, in retrospect, offered me a great opportunity to work on my speech a lot more.
Like a good basketball player who shoots baskets every day, John also practices daily to maintain his fluency. Let's listen.
What I found with me that really helps is if I can spend maybe only 5 minutes each morning as I'm driving to work thinking about my speech, thinking about relaxing, resisting time pressure, that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day, and I speak with more fluency.
Note how Steve emphasizes that we must each find out what works best for us.
Everyone has their own little answer to how they go and apply it. You know, as I previously said, I kind of have that little recorder that sits next to my telephone as a conscious reminder. I also used to have, and I still have this, just kind of a checkoff card. And you kind of keep track of whatever things that you're trying to concentrate at that point in time.
When you've reached this point in therapy, whether it's on your own or with a therapist, you'll need to be talking as much as you can, seeking opportunities to practice. Many programs have their own follow-up support groups as part of their maintenance procedures. Brett discusses how this helped her.
I would suggest it's important to join a support group. I think it's very helpful to talk to other people who stutter. It is a very alienating problem. And it's very common to believe that one is the only person who has this problem on the planet.
Shelley shares with us how she seeks out speaking situations to practice her new skills.
Since the therapy, I've seen every speaking situation as a challenge. So instead of hanging back and not really talking, just I've had to challenge it all. So if I sit in a classroom and now I'm having to challenge myself to say, okay, I'm going to talk to the person sitting next to me. Doesn't matter what I talk about, but I'm going to talk to that person. And at the start, it would be hi, and that would be it. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to have conversations. And just tiny little steps of going one step forward, and then you do a few back. But just little steps forward on being able to order in restaurants and talk to friends on the phone, because I wasn't able to do any of that. So just little steps forward until they became almost automatic.
What we've just described is the process that has worked for us and helped us make many positive and rewarding changes. We've yet to meet a motivated person who stutters who can't make at least some positive changes in their stuttering, and most can make significant changes.
All the people you've seen here have learned to become their own problem solvers. With hard work and dedication, you can do the same. You can contact the SFA at 1-800-992-9392 to find the names of some specialists in stuttering in your state. Here are several Stuttering Foundation of America publications, which will help you understand your stuttering and help you to begin to help yourself.